Good evening, everyone. It's 6:05. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today, I'm Ramona Burton, co-chair of our LSAT here for the Capitol Hill Cluster School. Forgive me, it's been a long day. I would ask that all of the attending LSAT members, I'll start with our principals and then go to our co-chair. And then if every other LSAT team member could introduce themselves.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Scott Berkowitz, principal at Peabody and Watkins.
Good evening, everybody. Eric Fraser, principal at Stuart Hopson Middle School.
Hello, Kimberly Griffin, second grade teacher at Watkins and co-chair.
Good evening, Catherine Antos, Peabody parent representative.
Hello, Shannon Russell, Peabody parent representative.
Hi, I'm Eben McPherson, I'm a Peabody teacher representative.
Good evening, Bernstein Black, Stuart Hopson teacher representative.
Hi, I'm Beth Rosera, Stuart Hopson teacher rep.
Hi, I'm Beth Dewhurst, Stuart Hopson building rep teacher.
I'm Stephen Sweeney, Stuart Hopson parent rep.
Hi, I'm Kate Fisk. I'm a Stuart Hopson teacher rep.
Pamela Dickerson, parent rep from Watkins.
Hi, Rachel Houghton, Peabody rep.
Hi, Annie Slattery, Peabody teacher rep.
Hi, Gertrude Johnson, Stuart Hopson parent rep.
Good evening, Kimberlyn Yurkowski, Watkins Elementary, librarian specialist.
Any other LSAT members not have the opportunity to introduce themselves yet? Okay, so I'll jump right in. Thank you all for joining us this evening. If you have the agenda in front of you, the first item up on our agenda is to discuss LSAT elections. As you know, elections for LSAT occurs each year in May. And as we discuss, or as I share with you the timeline that Ms. Griffin and I came up with regarding our nominations period, as well as our election or voting period, I want us to first have a conversation as a team regarding, our community's commitment towards equity and diversity. Want to discuss more about who's represented on the LSAT this year, what voices we're hearing from, and more importantly, what voices are missing as we consider who in our community would make great LSAT team members. Because it's going to take all of us to get engaged in the recruiting efforts to find great leaders that will help do this work with us next year. With that being said, I want to talk a bit about that sign-in sheet. For those who, I said, if you're on the LSAT and you're a parent, I'd like for you to fill it out, but it's kind of geared towards our parents. And it's the first time I've used it. I met with Bijan Verland, he's our community rep, and he shared with me a tool that we could utilize to kind of see who's coming to our meetings and keep track and kind of gauge what voices are we hearing. And I thought it was neat. And of course, as a first time use of it, I thought, I want to capture LSAT. So I might need to tweak it a little bit. And had we had something like this all year long, it would help us as a team to look at who's been coming to our meetings, even if it's once or twice, kind of compare to those who attend meetings and may be quiet during the meeting, but we may hear, from them outside of meetings as they send us an email or share a concern or great idea or any of that. So with that being said, I just want to stop talking so much and let anyone from our team just to share openly what voices do you think we might be missing from our LSAT as we be more intentional about who we try to recruit or nominate for next year's LSAT? Oh, and I'm sorry, let me say this. We have one parent representative for each campus that is coming up on the end of their term. So we will be seeking one parent from each of our campuses to replace them. Did that long sigh because we're losing 3 really great parents. I've already told Catherine I don't know what we're going to do without her. And then talking with Principal Berkowitz earlier this afternoon, we said the same thing, like, oh, what are we going to do with 3 really involved parents? How do we not hear from Pamela? How do we not hear from Steve? So think about who we're losing as we're thinking about who we want to recruit, who might be great replacements. Nobody? I can't, even our principal, no one, just like, whoa.
Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, but I didn't really focus on it until I saw the attendance sheet about the students with IEPs. But just from experience, depending on the whether it's a full-time or part-time IEP and the nature of it, I know that only because I've heard it from parents before that the students with learning disabilities, it's harder, the bandwidth that those parents have available to participate, it can be more limited unless, and this is a different, this past year has been a different kind of experience for me in that all of our meetings have been online. And so the sort of the commute to and from the meeting has been eliminated. So I don't know. I mean, it might be an opportunity to get a new voice of a parent of a student with special needs. And that was the one that jumped out at me because of your the way it was framed in the attendance sheet.
I second what Steve said. I have been speaking to parents, particularly in that group, because a lot of them during this time of virtual learning feel that they have been absent in the conversation. So I second what Steve mentioned. And I actually know someone who, I don't know if her daughter has been classified, because I don't think that she has, but she feels that she is. And she's already an active parent. So I think she will be one of my recommendations to fill a seat if she remains a walking parent. I think she may be considering leaving the cluster. I hope she doesn't, but if she stays, I will be recommending her for LSAT.
Thank you for that, Pamela. I was going to say, after the meeting, for those of us on the team that may have great ideas of some potential candidates, if you could shoot me an email. If you feel, just to let me know, I want to kind of have a list of possible candidates so that after you reach out, maybe I can follow up or, find out who the best, who else might be great to talk to them. Maybe several of us reach out over time without, since we're getting a good head start on it. So we want to start thinking about it now. Any other ideas? Voices missing?
Steve brings up a good point about this year's eliminated the commute. And I wonder if the evening commute, like it has been traditionally has been a significant barrier to parents being involved. And I wonder if doing this, being a virtual participant, would be helpful to parents who are interested in being the LSAT, but just can't juggle the whole evening, dinner time, getting from home, commuting to the school. And I'm thinking about families and parents who are not in Ward 6. I mean, I'm in Ward 5 and I make the commute, but I'm thinking about parents maybe in Ward 7 and 8 who also would have a commute in the evening. So if we can keep that option open to participate virtually in the coming years, that might open up availability and open up the doors for more people to participate who haven't before.
I think that's a great idea. And I see a message in the chat. I want to make sure it's captured in our recording. And Lona has shared that the PTA meetings will remain virtual for next year. And that I was going to say, see, great minds think alike. I was going to put that out there. I actually think that is a great idea. As a parent who lives in Ward 8, it is a commute for me, and it is a lot easier to, balance those things that we do after work from home and still be involved in the community. So I'd like to hear some other LSAT voices on their opinion regarding that, because I think it's an excellent idea, and also the leaders, our school leaders.
I would say that as a teacher, staying at school until 6 p.m. so you can go and stay till 8. Like, it'd be great to be able to be at home enjoying from my house. Because when school ends at 3:30. So I second virtual, or third, however many we've said now.
Okay. So let's see. Let's do a reaction for all of my LSAT members here who like the idea of continue on virtual. If you can give me a hand clap or shout, just a woo. And if you don't, because I'm seeing lots of praise, right? If you disagree, I'm going to tell you, unmute yourself and speak. That seems challenge. All right. That's an all in favor, so it's official. LSAT meetings will remain virtual for the 21-22 school year, just like PTA. All right.
Lona, can I toss an idea out just about like parent representation? I don't know if like LSAT's the place to think about this, but one thing I've been thinking about is like, how do we formalize some like the value that we place on some perspectives and like diverse perspectives in different like leadership groups in the school community? Like the PTA having like a race, class, and equity like group, right? Like, can you formalize, if not like a position for that, at least like that perspective? And in like recruitment of parents, like name, we want people who are experts and passionate about certain things, right? Whether it's students with disabilities and their experience in school, or like how our schools, can become and stay like anti-bias, anti-racist, and stay committed to those kinds of initiatives, or like staying committed to equity. And like, rather than just saying we need teacher representatives and we need parent representatives for LSAT, like we need people, and we need people who are going to take up these mantles and represent those perspectives at LSAT or on PTA or in the personnel committee or whatever those different groups are in a school. Because I think sometimes that just like if people make assumptions about, well, they don't care about that anyway, like why would I, the school, they don't talk about that, or they don't care about that, so I'm not going to put in for like a leadership role. But if we're actually soliciting, like we want that expertise and we want that perspective, I wonder if we might draw some different people out of the corners to come out for stuff like this. Kind of a nebulous ideas, but just throwing them out there.
That's a really great idea. Really great. I like that. And
I also had, I think it's a fairly new parent to the cluster this year or last year, and they didn't understand the difference between PTA and LSAT. So that could be something.
That's a common one too, to a point, like one of the resources that's provided to us is like kind of a comparison of PTA roles and responsibility versus LSAT. So we'll have to do a better job of communicating that and then making sure that resource is actually on our website, on our webpage, so that families who are new, you know, they can go and see that as well. So
follow up on what Principal Frazier said, I'd say in addition to people who've been participating in the race, class, and equity working group, also parents who've been participating in the kindred conversations would also be great to have on LSAT.
I was just thinking of that as well. I know someone. I know someone on who's participating. I don't know if he'd volunteer for it, but yeah, I can reach out to the parent that I know that's on. I know a couple parents actually in the kindred group and see what ideas that they share or have, you know, that they can share with us around recruiting. Let me see. So in saying that, let me just share some dates for the record. Our plan is to open the nominations on April 26th and continue them through May 16th. That gives us even now it's the 7th of April. So the fact that we're beginning now, but the official nomination form sent to the community for someone to either nominate themselves or a colleague or another parent, it will officially open on the 26th of April and close on the 16th. Take a day to prepare the actual ballot, and then we'll begin the voting on May 17th and let it run through the 25th with the winners being announced via email. The 25th is that Friday before that holiday. And then when we return that Tuesday after the Memorial Day holiday, it's our June meeting. So we'll announce it via email, but then we'll have the opportunity to introduce our new team members at the June meeting. And I see a message in the chat. Okay, so Lona says she doesn't think the list of kindred parents have been shared with the community. Perhaps we could share that with the regular attendees of LSAT meetings so we can help brainstorm. I'll work on that. Great idea, Lona. Okay.
But hold up, the list, the nice little picture, everybody, including someone you might know, Ramona, is actually on our website on the Race and Inclusion tab. That's where we're providing updates to the community on the kindred work.
Okay, thank you for that. That is, so now let me talk about that sign-in sheet, because the sign-in sheet, as I said, it brought up, you know, who's here, who's represented. I know M. Scott, you called me earlier to talk about it because he actually called and was like, hey, I have this idea. You know, I kind of want to see who's represented at our LSAT meetings, and I had already shared with him my plan. So I kind of blended some of his ideas as well. So I can share that information with you, Principal Berkowitz, as well as Principal Frazier, because it's a Google form will gather like data charts for us to see, you know, by race and campuses and all that other information, rather than share it with those of us here tonight. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, Ramona, I said this on the phone. I'll say it to everybody. I'd like to see not names and phone number, well, names, yes, but not phone numbers or email addresses, but actual like results of some of the questions, right? Like grade level bands. Do you have a child with an IEP or not, or 504, and race, right? I think that could be like a part of the opening to every meeting, like, okay, who's in the room? Okay, here's who's with us tonight, and here are the children they're representing as you know, members of the community tonight.
Okay, I can share that based on what's been submitted. We have 13 responses. and 32 participants. So we'll how about I come back to it? Because I'm wondering, I know I said if you're just a teacher, it doesn't lend itself to that, but as I think about it, there's probably a way I can capture the LSAT members who are just staff and don't have kids, right? They can, so I'll tweak it a little bit for next month and we'll play around until we get something that captures it. But I want to, if we can get Ms. Griffin, can you repost it in the chat? And I want to ask anyone who hasn't had an opportunity to complete the sign-in sheet, if you could take a brief moment and share some information with us. And maybe before we close out, we'll see who's with us, who was with us tonight. So moving.
I'm sorry, Ramona. And one more thing, sorry to cut you, but the point of this, and I'm gonna be clear about it, is like, so if the folks on this call now aren't representative of our kids, like I think our body has to ask ourselves, how do we change that, right? To make it representative. And I think, you know, Eric's comment about maybe having specific positions that will certainly lift up some certain voices, but also like as a community that's coming, like the 30 participants that are here, like we each can take action to draw people in, right? So that's one of the reasons why I think that information is valuable.
Thank you. Agreed. So the next item on our agenda has to do with the Peabody Construction and Building Repair Project. I did have an opportunity to attend the last meeting, and that acronym it slipped my head. Lona, if you're around, I saw her earlier, and now she's there.
School Improvement Team.
Right, the SIT meeting. And I had to, Lona didn't make it, but I called her after and I was like, what was that? It was a long list of items, and I don't know if we have any definitive answers. So I'll just say it was a lot shared to be done. It did seem like, oh yeah, we're gonna do blah, 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 and we're gonna turn the keys over by August. And it just, to me, didn't seem realistic. And I didn't want us to not discuss it. And I don't know if there's any more information to that, Lona, that you were able to gather. I know we were reaching out. Were we able to get any additional?
No, I saw Charles Allen today, and he didn't have an official update past that SIT meeting, but that's not to say there isn't one. He just hadn't had a chance to touch base with his staff.
Okay, so I just wanted to like put it on LSAT. This is definitely like in LSAT's lane, I'll say, to raise up any potential concerns. I mean, they say it will, the keys will be turned over, but at what point do we need to begin looking at how, if that building isn't ready, is going to impact operations for next year's instruction and everything. Like, I don't know if Principal Berkowitz, that has even crossed your mind. I know there's a million other things, but like, do you have a point at which, okay, I may need to start discussing temporaries or something. I don't know if you have that just thought.
I mean, they've only been certain with me that we're gonna get the keys like early August. So I was like, okay, what's plan B? They're like, we're not even gonna have that. We don't have that. And this was months ago, because there's no doubt in their mind that we'll open school on time. Now, part of the reason I think the community and I support this idea is to have the SIT is so that they are being transparent and we're holding them accountable to a timeline that is functional for an on-time start. So if there are doubts, we have to express that to them, so that if there is a need for a plan B, it comes together very quickly. So I guess there are doubts now that we have to really press them out on. So I'm glad, Lona, you went to Charles Allen, and I'll see what I can get from other people too, because the whole point of this to me was like short-term opening on time, but like building trust between the people that are responsible for our facilities and our community, which was significantly damaged, months after September. So if they're not, I'm happy to give them some feedback on that. If if we think that like their communication is not improving the trust relationship, then that's what I'll talk to them about as soon as possible.
I'll just say it was a concern from the parents that were on there, the questions that were asked. I don't know. You've been in education quite a while. That I don't understand how there isn't a plan B. It's April, and it was a lot. And I'm looking at a comment. Yeah, and Miss Featherstone Kirstland says she was at that SIT meeting. There were many unanswered questions. The partners that needed to be there were not there, and they kept saying that, oh, they're not going to. They didn't say they wouldn't come. I translate a lot of things because I know what it means. Oh, they'll come if they have to. But if this is the second meeting where they were requested to be there and they're not there, it's a concern. So if it hasn't been raised to you, Principal Berkowitz, there are a lot of concerned parents in the community, and I think a plan B just makes sense at this point. And it's not for you to develop, of course, but it is. I think you should begin to communicate that it's a concern. And given their history and other projects, we're not comfortable with all that they listed. And oh yeah, we're going to just give you that key on August 1st. It didn't seem realistic, and the work has. Well, maybe it has begun this week. Has it begun, Principal Berkowitz? Nope.
I don't know. No, didn't look like much was going. Nothing. I was by there today. It didn't look like any different than any other day.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'll just leave it at that. Just to officially make it a point of concern for us as a team. Okay, we're going to transition into talking about Term 4 and Summer Acceleration Plan updates. And I put Stuart Hopson on first. So I'll let Principal Frazier get us started.
Great. So I'll talk about Term 4, and then I think if I can share, I can put a couple slides up about summer. So Term 4, we are almost doubling the number of classrooms that we'll use on Wednesdays for our Wednesday program. So we're staying all virtual Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, but we have more teachers and staff interested in coming in on Wednesdays to support students. So we'll have almost twice as many AM and PM groups. I think we've almost gotten through, I think we've finished making offers to all of the 8th graders. So we're gonna go back to the priority list, and start at the top and just, start making offers again. For 8th grade students, I think 7th grade, we continue to have the most success, meaning, we make an offer and people accept it. And then 6th grade is somewhere in between. So I'm optimistic that at some point before the end of the school year, most of the kids or most of the families will have had the opportunity to say yes or no to a seat on Wednesdays, which is exciting. Again, we're just continuing. We'll continue. The other teachers who are virtual will be doing office hours on Wednesdays. So the teachers who are in person will be supporting students in a lot of like self-management and organization skills. So checking Aspen to see how they're doing in their classes, identifying assignments that they need to work on, and then working, spending some time working on those assignments and or checking in with their teachers through office hours to get assistance. So we're excited to look at the Term 3 marks when they go in a couple of weeks to see how, the treatment for the group that's been in on Wednesdays is going, because a lot of those students were kids who are struggling the most as measured by their grades going into the 3rd term. So we're hoping that we have, and I think we just like qualitatively, we know we have a few success stories already of like grades that have turned around and, engagement that's turned around for students. We just want to compare that to students who haven't been in and see how that's gone from a quantitative perspective. PTA has been great about organizing some like outdoor events for students. So there's like the Panther Cycling Club that's starting up. I think there are going to be some meetups on the field. We have the field open. We're going to share a schedule for that, but just generally speaking, except it's going to be closed on Wednesdays because we're in school and we have practices after school. But Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, the field will be open from roughly 8:30 in the morning until 3:30 when practices start. So if public wants to use that, they can, and then it will be open on the weekends as well. So if families want to meet up or students want to meet up, the SHMS field will be available for them. Like I said, we have athletics are going. So like right before our LSAT meeting, I was outside and the track practice was happening. The kids were running around the block, huffing and puffing. And the baseball team was wrapping up out on the field practice. So those are the two sports that we have. And boys and girls are invited to participate in track. And then it's the boys baseball team that's been practicing or just got it started. So I think that's it for big stuff for term 4. We're waiting on, I think it's pretty imminent, but we're going to get guidance about like the 8th grade promotion ceremony and like how schools will be able to do those, whether they'll be virtual, in-person, hybrid, or choice. So we're going to learn about that in the next couple of weeks and start communicating with 8th grade families. I think we are about to share information about pictures, school pictures as well, in either one of the next 2 newsletters. So that's something that a couple of families have been asking about, and we do have school photos planned and in the works for students. I think that's it for term 4. Let me see if I can share this. Or Ramona, do you want me to take questions on that first before I shift to summer, just so we're not confusing?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi there, it's Denise Fort. Hi, Principal Fraser.
Hi, Ms. Fort.
As always, thank you so much for what you're all doing. I'm super curious about what I read relative to cohorts and the fact that we're getting some relief on cohorts. How is Stuart Hopson thinking about that? Because it doesn't seem to be a real change in the in-person learning programming.
What's the relief? What relief are you speaking about specifically?
So apparently, I could be wrong. So I'd love to have better information on this. But from what I understood, DCPS and the mayor were saying the cohort issue was no longer a factor, meaning the cohorts we had of self-contained units were no longer a factor.
Interesting. And I've reread it a couple times today. My understanding for indoor learning or for outdoor?
For indoor, but I could have misread that. I only read it a couple times.
I did too. So maybe, I might need to, I'm definitely going to double check myself after the meeting. My understanding was with the current health situation in the city and the easing of social distancing to 3 feet, they actually made the cohorting more strict. So students can only be in secondary students can only be in one cohort.
Oh, then I totally misread that, and I'm definitely going to go back to look back.
Somebody should definitely, I know we're
let me jump in. Ms. Ford,
Fraser, I had the same understanding. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
I don't think Ms. Ford's wrong. I think there's been some mixed messages. I heard something from the mayor saying, they were relaxing the cohort limits. And then the DCPS guidance says, don't do that.
Yeah.
So I
heard the same message that Mr. Fraser heard.
It's actually more restrictive. It's more restrictive in term 4 than it was in term 3. The cohort
for middle
guidance.
school and high school also, but it's not the same for elementary school. It's more relaxed in elementary and more restricted. That was my understanding. Anyway.
And I think for elementary, it's only 2 cohorts, which is still pretty restricted. But the guidance that we got from DCPS for planning, any term 4 expansion, acknowledged that we can increase cohort size. So we can fit as many students as we can into a room with an individual teacher with the 3-foot distancing, as long as we can maintain that, and 6-foot distancing for the staff member. But the students have to stay in that group only. And then the only mixing that they can do is if they're participating in like an athletic program afterwards, they can be in a different cohort for that.
Got it. Okay, that's super helpful.
It is. Yeah, I'm glad we clarified that too, because there have been this has moved so quickly, honestly, there have been
no, I totally get it.
Yep.
So obviously without that cohort relaxation, that is the real challenge with middle school and not being able to switch around. Okay.
Right,
Thank
because
you.
I think most, yeah, and I think most middle schools, I know for us especially, but like for sure, most middle schools have long ago gotten away from cohorting students throughout their day, right? I know that used to happen where it's like you had the honors cohort, right? And they literally moved from class to class to class to class all day long. But for a lot of good reasons, schools have gotten away from that model of secondary school. So yeah, it would be the cohorting tightening did not do us any favors from that perspective.
Okay, that's helpful. And then I think my second question, I mean, because my child didn't get an opportunity to do Wednesdays, I am
Yeah, we're still
curious
doing
about how the Wednesday thing is working, right? In terms of morning versus afternoon, is it really just, you know, tutoring support, no real, I can't imagine it's like, you know, in-person class learning like we would have with Miss Rosera, something like that, or Mr. Frail. It's just really more of a support. Let's double in, spend some time together thinking about, you know, this math problem or this learning situation. Is that right?
Yeah, I can answer, and then I'm happy to let one of the teachers jump in who's been in, because we have a couple of them who are in person or on the call. I think it's a hybrid. Like I think, you know, if you're in a room with a math teacher, right, and you have a math question, they can jump over to your desk and do a quick little mini lesson or tutorial for you. Or having the teacher, they can make sure that you're able to successfully connect with your math teacher through office hours. But because the kids who are in, you know, the 6th grade group or the 7th grade group are in different English, math, science, and social studies classes, the teachers aren't coming in with like a 90-minute lesson plan for the whole group. But they are taking, I do think they're taking advantage of, like when the kids were doing NHD projects, right? Like if Miss Fisk could do a bulkier lesson for all of them, because she knew they all had that on their plate. So if there is something unifying all the kids in the class and the teacher who's in front of them has the expertise in that area, like they can lean in and have leaned in a little bit to do more structured support. And I'm hoping that we get you an offer soon. Like we are literally like just in the process of opening up those rosters, measuring classrooms to see how many seats we can add to the existing cohort. So in the next 2 weeks, like as we get ready for April 21st, which would be our next Wednesday, I think a lot more families will be getting phone calls and getting invited in, which is exciting.
Great.
And I can let one of the other teachers speak if they want to share.
And just before that, and I'm sorry to monopolize, if you could also talk to choir and theater and chorus at Stuart Hopson and whether we're thinking about anything differently.
Yeah, we were until we got the you can only be in one cohort guidance, right? Because that we were thinking about could they come in in the afternoons to do things like that? Because the DC health guidance eased things for them, right? But the cohorting guidance basically prevents us from acting on that unless we put kids in cohorts on Wednesday for the theater or art program that they would be doing later on in the day. When I do the presentation about summer, you'll see how we're thinking about that for the summer work though. So yeah, that's where that is.
Super. Thanks so much. And thanks for your indulgence, friends.
I did have 2 questions. I didn't know if one of the teachers wanted to speak first though. Hearing none. So 2 questions. Are your kids still AM, PM? They're grouped when they come in? Okay. So are any of them eating in the building, like meals? They do. When they eat in the building, are they grab and go? Are they in the cafeteria? Like, what does that look like? Middle school?
Yeah, so we're giving the kids 2 meals. They're grabbing breakfast on their way in and bringing it to their classroom if they want it. And then on the way out, that group can there's a grab and go lunch waiting for them on a table outside of the classroom on their way out the door. And then the afternoon group, they can grab a lunch on their way in and eat that before we get started. And then there's like a snack for them to take on the way home or maybe at dinner.
Thank you. Is that, I want to ask one question that can knock out both schools. So as I say this, I did get one email from a parent who was concerned that the one thing that with reducing the space in the classroom to increase cohort size to 3 feet, that there was a caveat for when 6 foot social distancing was still appropriate, and eating was one of them. So I want to to know, like, if they're going to eat in the classroom, if we're going to, you know, condense the space down to 3 feet, and they're taking breakfast in to eat, how will you ensure the 6 feet apart for that when the desk will be adjusted to 3 feet? Or is there a plan to maybe have those who opt to eat that breakfast go into the cafeteria where they're spaced out 6 feet rather than in the classroom once that the desks are placed closer?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the scale of the challenge for us is probably a lot smaller than it is for Peabody and Watkins. So I don't know if our plan would work for Principal Berkowitz, but like we haven't gotten there yet because we're still spaced at 6 feet. But I think the teachers would say, because the way the kids trickle in over a 45-minute period, like the kid who's eating is probably for the most part 6 feet away from, at least from other people who might be mask off. If we get into a situation at Stuart, at least, where we couldn't honor that and uphold that, we have space, like we could create auxiliary eating spaces for kids to be 6 feet apart and eat. And we can honestly even use like the outdoor spaces where they come in for them to eat before they come inside.
Great. And my second question, and I'll let Principal Berkowitz, if you can address that when we get to you, that would be great. And then my second question was, earlier you mentioned that you were going back up to the top of the list, that you had offered a seat to every 8th grader. Now you're going back up to the top of the list in that 7th grade. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? When you began offering more seats, did it start where you left off? And now you're going back up to the top? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we've been working for most of term 3 just to fill the seats that we set up in the classes. So we, as we planned with the RCC, we started with our highest priority students who were Title I students who were failing the most courses at the end of term 3. So they had the most cumulative or projected failures, at the end of term 2. So we made offers to those families, and as they either accepted or said no, we continued down those lists relative to each grade level. So then we got into our second tier of students, which were students who were not necessarily Title I, but who still were experiencing course failure or projected, term failure in terms 1 and 2. Once we got through that group, then the RCC recommended or agreed that we would go to just a generalized lottery for any remaining seats for students who are, on track and not failing any courses. So that was kind of our third tier group. So when I say we've gotten through all the 8th graders, I think we've literally gone through all 180 or however many of them there are to get a yes or no. The other thing that's been happening is we had people who accepted some seats or accepted seats, but have not been able to produce their immunization paperwork that they're supposed to within 20 days of starting, or, have not shown up 5 times in a row, which is the rule for when a student can be removed from the program for non-attendance. That obviously, to open up a seat for either of those 2 reasons takes a lot longer. So that we've just got to a place, we just had that moment where we were able to, after 5 Wednesday sessions, remove some students who haven't been attending, which opened some seats up. So we had a few of those in the last couple of weeks, but like I said, we literally are just building out the term 4 seats in Aspen. So we're going to add 44 seats, 22 of them in 7th grade. And then I think we're going to do 11 and 11 in 6th and 8th. Or maybe, actually, I think we're going to do 22 AM and PM in 7th, and then another AM and PM in 6th. So 22 and 22 each, because we've already invited all the 8th graders in for the existing seats that we have.
Thanks. Okay, you were going to share.
Sure. So these are draft, and I should have written that all over it, but I'll just say it. So this is, we're planning for 3 instructional or enrichment opportunities, or 3 types for students this summer. One is the capital A Acceleration Academy. So that's where, all schools got some acceleration dollars in the initial budget. And we're using those specifically for this. And like other schools, we're tasked like other schools in DCPS, we're tasked with prioritizing seats here for students who we identify as tier 2 and 3 students using the RTI or MTSS framework. So at Stuart, this is roughly, we have about 200 students who would qualify as tier 2 or 3 in RTI right now. So we're anticipating serving somewhere between, and this pending student interest and staff interest and availability, somewhere between 66 and 150 students out of that group of 200 who are eligible. On paper, rising 6th graders who would be Title II or tier 2 or tier 3, leaving Watkins or Ludlow or JO, would also be eligible here if we have the seats and the staff to support them as well. This program will run from July 19th through the 30th. So it's a 2-week, 5-day-a-week program with academic support in STEM and humanities in the morning, and then enrichment activities in the afternoon. With the current, unless the current guidance changes, students would be cohorted here just like they are expected to be in term 4. So they would be put in a cohort for the morning session, and that's the group they would stay with all day and all week as they go through these different learning experiences. So they get some help with STEM, which would be, you know, science and math heavy, and then humanities, so English and social studies support with more traditional like academic instruction. And then in the afternoons, we have a different group of teachers who will come in to jumpstart some of our arts programming, athletic opportunities. We're trying to get a couple of our partners like After School All-Stars to offer a club or enrichment activity in the afternoons. And then we might even have some cell groups, you know, where a social worker or somebody might do some other fun activities with the students in the afternoon. So the kids, what we'll have to do, unless the cohorting guidance changes, we'll work probably from the enrichment groups in the afternoon to design the cohorts. And then that's the group that the students will be with in the mornings. So there's a little bit of, you know, we're figuring out how to do that. And part of that is pending like staff interest and availability. We've sent out a staff survey to see who's available and interested in doing this, this program and the other two that I'll talk about during the summer. But that's the Summer Acceleration Academy. The dates are pretty firm. Most of the information here is probably how things are going to land once we finalize our staffing model and availability. It won't be for want of funding. It's just going to be if we have the kids who want to show up and the teachers who are available and partners who are available to support them. Let me show the next slide and then I can toggle back and forth if we have other questions. So the other two programs, well, it's really 3 other programs. One will be from August 9th through 12th. We're going to do our old-fashioned Stuart Hopson 4-day summer bridge for rising 6th graders. So the same, the in-person model that we've always done. We are aiming to do that the week of August 9th. We wanted to wait until later in the summer so that the students who are able to come in, you know, don't forget the things that we show them by the time school starts later in the month. So, you know, hopefully they can remember how to do the locker combination. And where the cafeteria is and all that stuff. So we'll do our old-fashioned, very popular Panther Pride Academy from the 9th through the 12th from roughly 9 o'clock to 2-ish. And that'll be for rising 6th graders from all 3 of our feeder schools. Really, anybody who's coming in for 6th grade will be eligible for that. The other thing that we are trying to organize are some kind of open enrollment, like open to anybody, enrichment and academic acceleration opportunities. So students who might be taking, you know, Math 8 while they're in 7th grade, right? Giving them a little bit of like math boot camp kind of work with a math teacher. And that could be hybrid and it could also be peppered throughout the summer. There could be like a literacy boot camp like that or a book club that meets throughout the summer. Just some other activities that families and students can opt into. We're letting the teachers create those. And we'll pay them a stipend for the whatever programs they come up with, and we'll put a calendar out for families so they can sign up. They will probably have some in-person, you know, elements. So like you do a certain number of virtual assignments and lessons with the teacher, and then there's a meetup in person on the field or something like that, or at the school. But those are going to be specific to the teachers who design them. But our goal is to get those opportunities out to all of our families. If and where possible, and also to allow you to make them work for your summer schedules. So we don't want a student to not attend because they're traveling or something like that. We want you to be able to engage in those learning experiences, whether you're here or not. So that's the other thing that we're planning. DCPS is centralizing a lot of their traditional programs, like extended school year for some students with disabilities, the LSAT Institute, which is for students who are English language learners, and then students who have I's, which basically in secondary schools, if you have an F in one of your classes at the end of the school year, it's going to turn into an I like it did last year, and you'll have a certain number of months to resolve that I. So the students could still get promoted to the next grade, but they'll have time to make an F turn into a D, C, B, or A based on doing some additional work. We can actually support that I resolution in our summer Acceleration Academy. So students don't have to choose between Acceleration Academy or like the centralized DCPS virtual programs. So those are the DCPS centralized programs will also be going on. I note those here just because teachers from throughout DCPS are eligible to work those. So depending on the schedule that they opt into for that, they might be ineligible to help us out for the Acceleration Academy or Summer Bridge or something like that. So that's what we're planning. Again, all this is pending our staff's availability. Funding for us, thankfully, is not going to be an issue because we have enough admin premium to support all these things. And the PTA is also going to support us with some stipends for some of the supplemental enrichment where we can get teachers on board. So it's really just going to be a staff and student availability and interest that's going to drive how much of this we can do and at what scale. And I'm happy to take questions. I don't see the chat.
Thank you, Principal Fraser. Chat. I don't see any questions in chat.
No question.
No questions.
It's Denise again, and I'm not gonna do my litany of questions because I do have a lot. So maybe I'll just also email you offline, Principal Fraser.
Yep.
I am curious though, what is over the past year, do you know how many kids have not logged on at all?
We have our daily attendance is actually better as measured by logins than it was in person, only by a percentage point or two, but I think our daily attendance is like 96% over the year.
That's awesome. That's good.
But it's tough because that's not super
Better than most
reliable.
school districts. Yeah.
We're doing really well, right? I mean, at least people have the browser open and are press and refresh once a day, right? I mean, grades are the better indicator there. So that's what we've been tracking is like, how are we doing compared to last year?
Right.
We're really proud, and I say this on behalf of the teacher, like we're really proud of some of the adjustments that we made from term 1 to term 2, because we just through some technical, without like compromising high expectations or anything like that, we made some technical changes to how we're engaging with students and families and like structuring grade books that have made like, people were calling it chasing zeros in term 1. And like, we don't hear that phrase anymore. Like it's just trying to be really clear about what the assignments are that matter that are going to be graded. And that's helped us to get the failure rates down while still doing the work that we're supposed to do in the curriculum.
And then I guess the other question is, this summer, how are you thinking about aligning the work to the current curriculum, 1, and 2, because you do, I mean, look, DC is getting a lot of money from the feds, which one can only hope can be deployed usefully and effectively. But how are you, like the programming that you're bringing in, you feel really good about the efficacy of actually making some progress, like maybe a couple months? So kids, when they arrive in August, September, maybe we can reduce the summer slide, but not the whole year slide. I'm just sort of curious, like how you're thinking about that programming.
Yeah, DCPS, for the Acceleration Academy, DCPS is providing schools like the option of getting basically curriculum that they're designing, just like they design all the rest of our curriculum. So we have opted into at least getting our hands on that stuff. I think some of these supplemental tasks or supplemental opportunities where the teachers are designing it, I think that stuff has the best, that'll probably be our best curriculum, right? Because they're going to be tailoring it to the courses they're going to teach next year. And they know what got trimmed out of the curriculum this year, or what didn't get as much time and play, or what students struggled with more during a virtual space. The other thing that we've been tracking, and we're about to do like our comprehensive school planning for next year, and we're going to look at some of this data together with families, hopefully too, like through some town halls. How have we done on those standardized metrics this year, like ANET and RI and iReady, compared to last year? And in some of our initial glances at that, we're actually doing pretty well as far as like holding the line on, compared to historic growth that we've had. It's apples to oranges in terms of like cohorts of kids. But some of the positive patterns that we used to see in person, we're continuing to see at least through half a year of, mostly or all virtual school. The other thing is we've partnered in our cluster, we partnered with ANET, and ANET engaged with us starting in the fall around instructional recovery. So like, how do you, coaching us on how do we continue to progress through the curriculum as it's written, while peppering in opportunities to close gaps without doing like standalone, you're about to take 7th grade English, so we're going to teach you 4th, 5th, and 6th grade standards that you didn't do well on in isolation in a boot camp, and then just put you into 7th grade English. So how do you, being strategic about how we continue to put those gap closing learning experiences into the curriculum so that we don't compromise the high expectations, for the current course. Because students are behind. I mean, it's tough work, right? Like we're getting into uncharted territory as a nation of educators and schools.
Yeah.
But I
That's
think
helpful.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I trust and believe in our teachers, and I think like whatever they do is going to be the best thing that we have for kids. I think, we'll take what DCPS gives us, but I think we've seen previews of some of those units for the summer acceleration, and they're things that were trimmed out from social studies, math, science, and English. You all may have experienced them previously as cornerstone units for the most part. And those are kind of those capstone supplemental mini units that happen across subjects. So those got trimmed out this year. So as far as alignment, like we know that they align to the curriculum because they used to be in there. And they tend to reflect the standards that were in a given unit of study. So they should, for the kids who, if we, to whatever degree we implement those in the acceleration academies, the content or the standards should be familiar to the kids from what they did in some of their classes this year, or were supposed to do.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I'm just going to leave this out there, and do not feel a need to respond, but I just want to put it out there. So my kiddo is going into 8th grade next year, and we know, like, based on all I've heard from all the other DCPS parents, like my life and his life are going to be upturned as we think about 9th grade. I would love to, sort of have a deeper conversation between you and 8th grade parents about, like, 7th grade was a total blah. And that factors into the selective school process, like how we should be thinking about that, what we should be doing now, and what you all can do, now as Stuart Hopson to pay special attention to that. And maybe you've already done that this year with the 8th graders. I'm sure you have, but I think other 8th grade parents would love to engage with you about how we make that happen. Because I would probably do a massive protest laying down in the streets with Lona Valmoro if my kiddo at any way, is impacted by structural situations that were out of his control, but that will impact his 9th grade application process. So everybody just be aware, the crazy person out on the street will be me. But let's have a conversation about that.
No, I mean, I completely appreciate that. I appreciate the idea, and I also appreciate your willingness to advocate for our kids. So no love lost there. I think, I would love to connect more about that. And we did do some stuff for this year's 8th graders. I think what was challenging was nobody in the city knew what the guidance was, right? So we kind of got those meetings got pushed back a little bit. Like some of Counselor Williams and AP Turner's usual fall meetings, we just had to wait on because we were waiting on whether or not, application high schools were going to change application procedures and things like that. So yeah, we do intend to do that. And I think there's like something special we have to do for 6th graders who are coming into 7th grade too, right? Like kids who
Yeah, the whole thing. Totally get it.
Yeah. Like we need to figure out like, what is that special treatment plan to rebuild community with each of the grade levels? Cause they all missed out and lost something this year. And it's different relative to whatever their position or standing was in the school, right? 6th graders who just never set foot in the building regularly, right? They need something else. So yeah, I definitely want to do that. And if you have ideas, like please do fill my inbox up with those, or like ask for some time. I'd love to meet with some families about how we can, what are those things that you feel are most pressing? Because we can definitely, that can guide our work and our calendaring for what we do through the summer and into the early part of next school year.
Super. Thank you so much. And thank you again, friends, for indulging me.
Not a problem. We got lots of agree with Denise, so that was helpful. I think we're ready to transition to Principal Berkowitz as he shares term 4 updates and his summer acceleration plans for Peabody Watkins.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm ready to go. I'm going to share my screen also. Is that in there? All right. So I maybe I messed up the agenda or we're out of order. I don't know, but I'm gonna do the order I planned on doing. So I'll start with the summer stuff. Where's present? Why do I have so much trouble with this? I was having trouble with this earlier today. So so here we go with summer acceleration. The good news is we have our staff mostly confirmed. These are the folks who are opting into doing the work, which is fabulous. It's 7 or 8 people. Everyone's into it. That doesn't mean we'll have this many groups of kids. Miss Judy is a instructional assistant for Peabody, which is, she'll be partnered with Miss Brooks, obviously. Miss Tyler is our social worker at Watkins and Peabody. So she won't have her own group, but she'll be there supporting with SEL with all of the teachers and all of the students, which is really great. And Mr. Gross is going to take this opportunity to flex his leadership and be our summer acceleration coordinator, which I'm grateful for. And so is Mr. Bover and Ms. Hollis. So I'm really proud of these folks stepping up. I think there's a history of some of them being involved with our kids this summer, and I'm glad that they are stepping up again this summer. So just like Principal Frazier said, the seats are going to be offered only to Tier 2 or Tier 3 students. And well, probably, I think it will end up being only, but it'll certainly be them first. We are about at 7 classes. I'm estimating about 14 students, which works out to about 94 students. And we'll serve the rising pre-K 4 all the way up to the rising 5th graders. So no rising pre-K 3ers. They're a little too young and not yet probably fully enrolled. There might be some mixed grade level groupings here, especially at the younger years where we have fewer Tier 2 and Tier 3 students. It might be an entire Peabody cohort that works with Miss Brooks and Miss Judy, but we'll see on our offers and our student data to see how that works out. The purpose of this that I don't want to get away of, like we're going to be doing this. We're going to be in for 2 weeks, and even if we were in for 4 weeks, there's really no evidence in the research that says like summer school is a real difference maker. So we're approaching this as a way to maintain a connection to school, build relationships with future teachers, and also deepen skills and deepen curiosity. We're going to continue the regular or the typical assessment methods to do like a pre and a post to see the impact, but really it's going to be about connection and curiosity. And that's, I think, the right way to go, especially since it's possible some of our kids are going to be in the building for the first time ever, and possibly for the first time in any school in over a year. So our staff is ready to go for 2 weeks in July and 12th and the 19th. We'll do 5 full days a week. We have 9 to 1 slated for all students, and it's going to be free for all students. I'm working with one of our school partners. I'm going to be cagey. I was told not to say any partnership names because the agreement hasn't been finalized. But we think it's really important, and I'm confident that this is going to get through. We think it's important to offer a full day for many families. Like, many families won't do a half day, so we're going to offer a full day for everybody. However, given the procurement process and the contracts and our budget, frankly, we can really only do full scholarships for about half of our students. I'm working with the partners to see if we can do maybe some partial scholarships, and that might increase the number of full scholarships that are possible. But this process is going to be complicated. I'm going to work with the partners to make sure it's really detailed and fleshed out and clear to our families once we begin enrollment. This will certainly be at Watkins, now at Peabody. As you've heard, we're not open yet. But our teachers are really excited about exploring ideas that have been thrown out there, like, let's meet at the RFK Fields and go to Kingman Island. Let's do some walking tours of some interesting sites in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. And we're really looking at our neighborhood and our city as part of the classroom, so that we can be outside and be connected to that community and our learning. So I mentioned the assessments, but really we want this to be fun and creative. We'll have a layer of social emotional learning and on-site support from Ms. Tyler. And there's some basic ideas that the DCPS curriculum has offered, but our teachers are also really excited about making this their own. Like, one of our teachers was really excited about doing some writing. I think if you're on the call, the mayor gave us a really exciting writing idea today. She has said what we can do for statehood is partner with another school she named in Alaska, Maine, and West Virginia, and see if we can persuade students in those schools to influence their senators to vote for statehood. I thought that was cool. And that could be a great summer project to connect to our persuasive writing skills that we build out. So that's the scope of the summer acceleration as we have it. Talking with our teachers, there's basically universal exhaustion, and we want time for teachers to recharge after the school year ends, which gives us 2 weeks and some time before we come back. I also think, like, budget wise, our budget is not infinite for our acceleration funding, and it needs to last through next school year, right? Not just the summer and this. I'm not so sure there's a big question mark about enrollment, right? Who's going to come? Are we going to fill all the seats? It certainly wouldn't be cost effective to have a classroom of 4 kids when that money could go to to our kids when they are present, ideally in the building in the fall. So my approach to spending this money is definitely have something in the summer that, like I said, connects kids to school and gets them curious and, reaches out to our kids who need us most, but also to make sure the money is intentional and, like, actually applied to students and staff when we know we have them in the fall. One other piece of the summer that I hope happens, this is the big if, but one of our partners is very excited about continuing to host summer programming that would be at cost, and maybe there would be a scholarship arrangement that would not come from our acceleration funds, maybe somewhere else. But the last item, I think it's number 6 on the building use permissions, is this, like, external partner running a summer camp or an enrichment camp. So we have to wait for DCPS to say, no, you're not having extended school year. No, you're not co-hosting summer acceleration with a neighbor school. But once we are okay to do that, I think we can move forward with announcement for a separate and independent programming, like kind of subletting our space. In terms of health and safety, we would, I think our 94 kids, if we get 94, could come through one entrance, and the summer programming, the additional summer programming could come from another in our second entrance, like we've been doing this term 3, and just host the kids on separate floors and make sure their schedule is such that there's no interaction. Either way, going back to this piece, the cohorts that exist with our teachers from 9 to 1 need to remain intact for the 1 to 5, right? So that's going to be a restriction that probably reduces the cost effectiveness of this program, but I think it was likely to be worth it to make sure that we can be an attractive summer option for those 2 weeks for our students who need it most. All right, so that's an overview on our summer acceleration. I'll pause there for questions.
Any questions for the Peabody Watkins summer program?
When do you anticipate families would hear if their students are being invited to participate?
I want this to happen as soon as possible. The part of the thing that's not going to be quick is the partnership agreement, because that goes through a not so fast procurement process. I think there's no reason to stop us from saying, of identifying our students and saying, like, you are in the potential pool to be called in for summer. I don't know. I guess that would be a good question for parents. Like, would parents want to even know if it's a possibility for them? Would that help with summer planning?
We're going to send that out just if you want consistency, like because we know who's tier 2 and tier 3. So we're going to share that with that group for Acceleration Academy specifically.
Okay. When are you going to do that? Before break or after?
The day before you do. No, I don't. Maybe before. I mean, we can connect about that if you want to time it. But I think if people just know they're going to hear from both of us, that it's easy enough. Like, you can just go from, we're just going to say we anticipate that you'll be eligible for this if you want to mark your calendars.
Yeah.
Well, Principal Frazier, I don't know if this is a fluke, but Sean got an email about summer acceleration program at Stuart Hopson.
We're sending it out today.
I don't know if that was a mistake, but I mean, I got it yesterday.
It's probably because we pulled the Aspen email. So his email is probably listed in one of the fields where it should be at parents. That's what that means.
Yeah, I thought we had to be a little slower with reaching out to families, but I can go back on the timeline that Central said. Right, but to Principal Frazier's point, we can do that rather quickly.
And from a parent perspective, I think it would definitely be helpful to know sooner than later for planning purposes.
That it's an option.
Yeah.
All right, should I move over to term 4? Silence is a yes. Okay, so let's start with in-person learning. We're continuing to prioritize our students based on their needs. So we went back to teachers. We asked everyone to make suggestions based on their data, whether it's academic, attendance, social emotional needs, attendance or engagement rather. And we put that into our system and went back to the algorithm that the DCPS pulled and made sure that we were kind of tiering our kids. So some of the kids that the algorithm pulls are in the tier 1s, not all of them. Like, you're automatically in there if you had an IEP. There are plenty of people that have IEPs that are doing well. like you might have an IEP just for speech. So this time, since we didn't have to follow that exactly, we did not prioritize a student who fits that profile this time. Our second round of calls went to the students that we identified based on their data, like I suggested before. And another thing I think we got a lot better at this time was the last round was siblings of kids that are already in person. So this time we were able to identify, because we surveyed our in-person people, which siblings, if one student was currently in school, well, then their sibling got into that third tier, I shouldn't use tier, third round of calls, and then everyone else is in that random pool. So that was our student selection process, which was basically the same as the first one, although we had a little more flexibility in that first round, and we were able to be. I think we got all of the siblings this time. I haven't heard anybody any issues with siblings just yet, and in almost every case, I think if one sibling's in, the other sibling's in, so long as that grade level's open. So we are increasing our classes, and this is not news, at the grade levels that are currently open: pre-K3, kindergarten, first grade, third grade, and fifth grade. We're also opening brand new classes, one pre-K3 class. We surveyed families in pre-K3 that this additional class will be the third in-person learning class, plus the expansion. I think just narrowly met the minimum number we'd need to open the class. So that's opening, and we're enrolling now in pre-K3. And then we have an additional third grade teacher opening a self-contained class up to 19 kids. And we're enrolling those students as well. Big picture from the change from term 3 to 4 is we're up from 109 to a possible 268 kids in person, which is a much bigger number, and it's a really, really good thing. That these two extra full classes here I think make a big difference in that. The other driver of that, I can't believe I left this out. The other driver in that is, of course, the pre-K4. How did I do that? So we're opening 4 pre-K4 classes 2 days a week. So that's going to be up to, let's see, 36, 46 kids. I think Miss Slattery, Miss Houghton are on the call. Sorry about that. And Miss McPherson. Look at pre-K4. So yeah, sorry. So where does that leave us in our calling? Here's the latest as of a couple hours ago, and this is not current anymore. Ms. Turner texted me during an LSAT meeting that a couple more kids have accepted seats. So these numbers continue to go down and down and down. We will pause on the start date of when students can start in pre-K in term 4 on Friday, but we won't stop making offers. The reason why we're pausing, so if you get a call, if you're one of these remaining seats, you might get a call right now. Ms. Turner's working, she works seemingly 24 hours a day, and you get a call, you'll start on Monday for sure, but at a certain point on Friday, we're going to stop. We'll continue calling, but we'll say teachers need time to prepare for your students, so you'll start the Thursday, the 21st, just so rosters can settle out and teachers can get the right number of desks moved into their classroom. We've got a desk moving operation planned for Friday, and then teacher workday on Monday. Teachers want to make sure, the students' names are on the desk, and whenever a student starts, it's not a good start if the teacher is surprised that the student's there, right? The teacher wants to say, wants to be able to communicate that we were expecting you. Here's your desk, here's your name, here's your picture. And so that's why we're going to delay a start for these outstanding seats. I think these numbers will drop again over the next couple of days, but we've done a great job filling up a lot of our classes. There's fifth grades pretty much maxed out. As you can see, kindergarten, first grades maxed out as well. Pre-K 4 to 7, that number doesn't sound right to me right now, but
It doesn't sound right to me either, Mr. Berkeley. I'm pretty sure that at last check, I know Ms. Turner has made an update.
it's 2, 4, it's 5.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's close enough. Yeah, like I said, this stuff's changing by the minute. The good news is our teachers do have the real-time information on the students' names and where they're going. We do have spring break where our registrars, Ms. Turner and Ms. Roy, are going to be able to update Aspen when no one's using it. So that rollover, that on-off switch that was really sticky for term 2 to 3 won't be the same stickiness from term 3 to term 4. There's some other fun things, but before I move away from this term 4 expansion, I can pause for questions.
Yeah, one question, Principal Berkowitz. When you're talking about making the calls, did you start by if there was a family that had a high need student and they turned down a seat in term 3? Did they get a call and the option to return in term 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
To be honest, I even called some families in the middle of term 3 to come because we had some open seats and they had turned down the term 3 option. So I wanted to check back with them after a couple of weeks. So yes is the answer. Not necessarily everybody, but the ones that we identified.
I see a raised hand. Is that you, Tom? Yep.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, I wanted to follow up on the question that was just asked. Was that, excuse me, there's some spirited playing behind me here. Who was that? Catherine who asked the question just prior to me?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So I have a question about term 4 IPL selection because I'm trying to get things straight and I'm confused by precisely how Principal Berkowitz you selected for term 4 in-person learning, because here you say that you continued to prioritize students based on need. I think I also heard you say that your selection process for in-person learning was identical in term 3 and term 4. And then in response to Catherine's question about whether any high need students who turned down term 3 were given the chance at a seat in term 4, your answer was yes. And yet in your email to the community about term 4 selection, I think it was last week, you said you were starting at the number where things left off, right? So if you ended with the term 3 selection with student number 33, you moved on to student number 34. There was no discussion, unless I'm wrong, I don't recall seeing anything about prioritizing students based on need.
I think, Tom, the next sentence in there was something about one caveat being the appeals process for students with needs. Like the
Right.
34 to 35 line was in there. I think the next line was, maybe this is not how I remember it. Someone could pull it up, but the one caveat being the identification process at the school level.
Okay. Yeah. I guess you know that a group of parents and I have been in contact with you about this because we were really concerned because it just seemed like all of a sudden, as coronavirus rates go down and as the availability of the vaccine goes up, it just seemed like it was fundamentally inequitable to not return to the priority students for term 4 access. in terms of in-person learning. And you told us in an email that actually, right, you were, that it wasn't, you weren't prioritizing students based on need entirely. So I am confused. And of course, you mentioned that, you were prevented from doing so in part by some DCPS rules. So I just want to get a straight answer here, because this is such an important, we talk about leading with equity.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on this, and the community is too.
Yeah, thanks for the chance to clarify. In that email exchange we had, I haven't written back yet because I was like, this needs to be a conversation. Did we prioritize the students with needs? Yes, we did. Were we told to start where you left off? Also, yes. Yes, we're supposed to start where we left off, but we can, like we did last time, the kids that weren't picked up in the algorithm, we can make these appeals to put them up, right? And I mentioned pre-K4 before, right? So if the pre-K4 teachers want to chime in and say how that process unfolded, that would be good. But what the messaging to me was not so clear, and then surprising that it's just start where you left off. And then I was like, well, what about the priorities? And it wasn't that. And then there was this selection office hours thing that came out. I was like, oh yeah, you can still do your appeals. So maybe it wouldn't have even been worth it to say this 35 to 36 thing, because functionally we still ran through our appeals process, and we made sure that all of our students that we have in our system that are identified as experiencing homelessness, we called them first. Absolutely, we called them first. So I don't know. I think that's the story. Can I clarify that in any way?
I can chime in here, Mr. Berkowitz. And I'm sorry to cut you off, Ramona. Sorry, this is Miss Slattery. I know on the pre-K4 level, we talked a lot, amongst ourselves as teachers, but also with admin, about the importance of giving the people who turned down the spot for term 3, giving them another chance to accept, given that a lot of circumstances had changed for term 4, which might have changed those families' decisions and thoughts on returning to in-person learning. I do understand the frustration that families are having. However, I do believe that at least on the pre-K4 level, because we have, all 4 teachers coming back, we're able to have a good amount of students returning. So,
Annie, put that back on, please.
I'm not sure if I clarified, answered, or not.
No, I think you're supporting what I said, Miss Slattery, so I appreciate it. How does that sound to you, Tom?
Well, I'll let Tom respond, and then I want to raise up what was captured in your email, your principal's message, to be exact. And Catherine, thank you. She posted it in the chat, and in verbatim, it says, for all expanding classes, we will resume calls from where we left off with our term 3 selection process. Meaning, if we fill the class with student number 35, student number 36 will get the next offer for that class. One caveat is that we are undergoing another round of appeals based on school identified academic need, and we will honor sibling preferences for students currently attending in person. Please note, having a sibling in person does not guarantee an offer for another sibling. And so, to be honest, it says it's sending 2 messages. It isn't clear. And as a leader, we were looking for it to be clear. If you were leading with equity, I think what I'm hearing others and what the intent of that email, and I'll say it, I was on it as part of race, class, and equity. What we wanted to hear as a leader is that this is what I'm doing. I'm starting with those who turn down seats because those are my students who are most in need. Remember when we met and looked at the data, what did we discover? Who was most in need? This is where I'm starting. When I finish with them, I'll pick up with number 36. But you said I'm doing the same, I'm doing this and this almost at the same time. It was like I'm just speaking bluntly, trying to please multiple constituent groups in the community. And so we're not sure what you did.
All right, well, I'm sorry I wasn't clear. I have to follow the process, right? And I think if I maybe switch these like phrases around, that might have been more effective.
Be clear about the process, because even now, as you say, I have to follow the process.
Yeah.
When you say one caveat, that process was start where I left off. But here's the one caveat: they gave you the flexibility, the autonomy to prioritize students in need. So that gave you the ability to say, here's what I'm doing, and that's my decision. I'm sticking by it, right? That's all. So it's just, it opens the door for lots of gray. So, and that's that's the conversation. So I'm very direct, you know that. So it's great. So in this room with this grade level, I picked this one because that parent is really loud and been driving me crazy and has one sibling in and the other one not. So I'll let her in. And this one is high priority. And this one, it is a big box of confusion. And that's what it is. I don't know that you can go back now because the seats are almost filled, but we wanted to be certain that we share our concern, and that, as stated in the email, it's times like these when our community, we say we stand behind, we're trying to build a more equitable community. We want you to boldly profess your commitment to equity as opposed to write a gray statement. That's what that was.
Okay. So I like feedback totally taken and accepted. And I agree with you on the boldness. That's funny you used that term. I was using that yesterday when I was talking with our kindred group. But after this conversation, is there grayness around how we actually executed prioritization?
I'll let, I still think it's gray, but I'll let others speak. Because I think, to be transparent at this point, maybe we'll go back to like, who's in those seats again, right? Did we fill those empty seats with more high priority need students or not? So we can put that on the agenda for next month, or you can share it in an upcoming update. That's one way, but I'll let some others talk because my concern is on second grade, and I'll bring that up in public comment.
So that goes back to why I asked the question that I did, because the principal's message was a little unclear to me. And so that's why I asked, were the high need students who are offered the spots first last time around and turned them down, were they offered spots again in term 4? And my reasoning behind it was exactly what Ms. Slatterly explained really well, that a lot has changed since then. So a family that may have said no a couple months ago is now interested in sending their student in. And so what I heard you say in response to that was, yes, you started by going back to those high need students. You made those calls first, and then you moved on the list from there. But just so there's clarity, did I hear that response correctly? Is that how the process worked?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So like kids that were not high needs that might have declined in term 3, like are last on the list for term 4.
Okay.
Right? Kids that are identified with a need, they're in that second or first round of calls. I want to make this crystal clear, and if this is like a communication thing, then I'll take it. But I believe we can maintain the priority of maintain the importance and like of executing on this prioritization process. I don't think the loud parent did not get in, right? Because they were loud. They might have gotten in for another reason, but not because they were loud.
Any other comments on this topic? Questions?
Hi. I was wondering if you could say more. I just feel like I missed something about 2nd and 4th grade. I feel like sometimes the communication comes out directly to the parents that it impacts, but is there no plan to open 2nd or 4th grade?
That's right. So what happened with term 3 was we had some volunteers to open their classrooms. As everybody knows, the folks that didn't volunteer were compelled to work and serve in person. And I think the 2nd and 4th grade parents knew what happened when we opened the classroom, kids came, and then HR made their decisions, and then the teachers resumed work virtually. One of the lessons I learned during that process, and I think that Chris said it so clearly to me, Chris, I see your hand there, was like not having cooperation on this is potentially another setup for disappointment for parents, right? And kids especially. So when we discuss this reopening with staff and weekly messaging every time, and anytime I have the chance, volunteers. Did I put that on a slide? We do have, I forget the number. Oh, I did. I said at the front, nine teachers who are coming in based on volunteerism, right? The pre-K4 team, I said it, Mr. Simmons, Miss Tyler, Miss Moore, that's up for Miss Egan, and Miss Judy, a couple others. That's what's enabling us to expand, right? And for 2nd and 4th grade, we didn't get the volunteers. I'm not gonna tell kids and families that we're gonna open 2nd and 4th grade, go through an HR process again, only to but not have certainty that that's going to happen. So that's where we are with 2nd and 4th grade.
I think Chris had his hand up. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Principal Berkowitz. This is helped clarify some things. And as Tom and Ramona said, citing our conversation, I think there was still some confusion. I just want to echo what Ramona said, which is that maybe it's a matter of people speaking up in different fora, but there are parents in this community who want it sort of boldly stated, right? That when there are opportunities for which there are limited resources, that the priority of the community is that those go to high need students, clearly, plainly, period. That's it. No tap dance, no hide behind blaming DCPS, maybe, but maybe it's not them, but maybe it is, or just, we want that to be the cornerstone of this community. There are parents in the community who feel differently. And I don't think that this needs to be confrontational, but it can be, right? And I think that one question I have, you asked about clarity. I think it's important for us to know whether or not DCPS directed principals and school administrators to not go back in that direction, whether they required people to rely on an appeals process or not. Because if that's the case, then we need to address our concerns elsewhere, not with you necessarily, right? And there are plenty of us who are happy to do that, right? But we need to know that clearly, right? And that's a priority for me.
Yeah, great. So yeah, thank you, Chris. I think the 2 points you made, the encouragement to be bold is sometimes something that I need, right? And that's unfortunate that I'm admitting that, but I hear from people who see things differently than you, sometimes more often, right? And like I've had conversations about, you know, someone recently said to me, it's like, but that's not equal, but that's not fair. And I was like, but that's our commitment to equity, right? That was in a one-on-one conversation. And, you know, when this conversation is a great reminder for me to know that I have the support to be as bold as I want to be, because sometimes that's everything's a calculation, right? So thank you everyone for bringing this up, and I think we're executing on the priority, and I think that it was a miss in my communication and a missed opportunity to be bold in communicating the priority. As far as the selection process, yeah, I mean, that's it. The directions was to not start over from the top.
Thank you. That's good to know.
Yeah. I think DCPS will say like, but schools had autonomy to do the appeals process. But per your point, like to rely on the appeals process is a different thing.
Okay, so let's go back to the second and fourth grade. And I'll speak to second because I'm a second grade parent, and I think Shannon had mentioned something about messages going only to the parents in a particular grade level, which kind of limits the transparency that we so want and need as a community. I get the personalized email to those parents of that particular grade level, but to keep us as a community aware of all of the changes that are going on. Like, this is not an easy year, we get it, but we're kind of siloed by grade level and by teacher sometimes, depending on what's going on. But as a second grade parent, I received an email that spoke specifically to the support that we were to get for our kids who, you know, because of whatever circumstances, doesn't matter, they're virtual, fine. But we were sold on this enhanced virtual experience with the support of Ms. Moore, who would stay in place even when one of the teachers who was out on leave returned to provide additional direct instruction small group. But because I'm not in that class that Ms. Moore, my son is not in the class that Ms. Moore was supporting, those parents in that class or in that paired class got the email that she was moving on to do something else. So as a second grade parent on the other side, the other team, I was waiting to see Ms. Moore push in or do something across second grade to allow my son to get more direct instruction or something, because I'll tell you that if I had a magic wand and could rewind time, I would have made some different choices about next school year based on my frustrations around not knowing, honestly, being told one thing and something totally different happening. And I get, you know, plans having to change, which is why I mentioned plan B for Peabody, right? You need a plan A and a B, sometimes a C, but to not be informed when that change was made is not, it's not okay. It's frustrating. So can you speak to what's going on, what the plan is to provide that support we were promised to enhance the virtual learning experience for second grade students?
Yeah, I never intended to send a message that Miss Moore would be an enhancement, right? She wasn't. She filled in for Miss Griffin. Miss Moore was, you know, I bent the rules a little bit, and even in moving her over there, because she filled a different teacher's position who was on leave, right? Given the nature of Miss Griffin's leave, I couldn't hire someone in her position, so I hired it from someone else because I knew second grade needed it. And that contract, because it's tied to a staff member's leave, was up on March 31st. I think I had hoped that we'd be able to keep Miss Moore for longer, but because those contracts, it ended because the person returned to duty, which is a good thing, of course, but that also like cuts us off from Miss Moore. So I I don't think all of that transparency is necessarily like appropriate for the whole community. And if I had promised additional support in the form of Miss Moore, maybe I miscommunicated again, but I don't think that was what I promised the second grade families. I think there are other additional supports, and off the top of my head, I don't know which staff members are working with second grade. I think it's Miss Rachel, our instructional aide, and I don't remember the other person, but I believe there are 2 staff members working with the second graders, in addition to the 4 homeroom teachers in some small group time, when they're not with the small groups with their 4 homeroom teachers.
Hi, this is Marisol Bayo. Thank you, Principal Berkowitz. And I really would love to +1 and second everything that Ramona has said. As you know from our communication regarding our second grader, our major frustration has been that the miscommunication, certainly. I mean, the fact that Ms. Moore didn't come on board for a very short time, when, you know, the reality is that one of the staff members was facing a very grave personal situation and tragedy that was something that administration presumably would have been aware of, and that something wasn't dealt with until March was pretty astounding to us. And that during the time that we did not have one of our teachers, you know, we've had 4 math teachers and no math assignments. That's pretty astounding. And this is not, I want to be very clear about our staff in terms of our teachers, because obviously we know that COVID has been facing and affecting people at a very personal level. So I want to be really clear that our frustration has been at the administrative level, where we have not seen this taken care of. And so I would like to really second Ramona on this, because there has been a gap, a leadership gap that has led for us to a pretty significant learning gap. And I think that that's something that needs to be discussed and known, because I think it's going to affect the choices that many parents will be making come next year.
Yeah, Marisol, I think all those points are fair points. And I agree with you that, you know, I think what you're saying is second graders didn't deserve this year, right? Like they didn't get what they deserved. There was too much inconsistency and going on that teachers in many cases did not have control over. I want to remember it is like I moved as fast as I could to hire Miss Moore. We interviewed her quickly, and there was a long time before from the time that I pressed select for hire, and we were able to bring her on. That was wildly frustrating. The process that I hope I don't overshare, Ms. Griffin, but like the process that Ms. Griffin and I were working on together with HR to make sure that things were as clear as they could be and provide certainty for her and for our kids just took forever. And that ties my hands with the next move that I could make. I don't know. I don't know if Ms. Griffin wants to be in here, but like like I couldn't even hire someone in Ms. Griffin's place, right? Until I wasn't able to do it, given like the rules of these, like they're called temporary teachers, or no later than. And I agree, Marisol. Like I'm sorry I didn't solve this. It wasn't done quickly enough, and I'm sure there are learning gaps as a result. I don't know what I would have or could have done differently, but I know I didn't get the results, and I know that's what matters most. And also, I see Ramona's text. She cited her claim with evidence there, and like, yeah, I had intended to keep Miss Moore on, and I wasn't able to. So again, I wasn't able to fulfill that commitment. So sorry.
Mr. Berkowitz, can I just ask a follow-up? I mean, what's going to happen and what's your plan for these second graders? Because I think we're all in agreement that second grade was pretty disastrous for many families. What's going to happen with these kids in third grade? How are we going to be addressing learning loss? How are we going to be dealing with that, all of the fallout from a lot of this? How are you planning to do that?
Yeah, I've thought about that. I think, given the second graders' experience, like that's a very strong reason for the instructional gaps to be addressed first. The learning gaps, I shouldn't call them instructional gaps, the learning gaps to be addressed first, right? Second graders are going to come in not where they're used to coming in. So, that experience has to be, of course, matched up with our data, but like in my heart, third grade is going to need the most love and attention next year. And that has to transfer not out of my heart, but into actual excellent instruction from every third grade teacher and additional support through the extra resources that we do have.
So I typed in the chat something that you spoke to.
The long-term subs.
No, okay, I'll come back to that. But you said the additional resources, and in your presentation, you spoke to what tier 2 and tier 3 students would get. And I've said this, like rewinding, I can go back to January. I clearly understand RTI and MTSS, but for a parent like me who has a student who is not going to show up on your tier 2 or 3, you have not shared any plan that makes me feel comfortable that he's going to get what he needs. Like your definition of support is if they're behind. But my son came to second grade ahead, right? So him still being ahead and not demonstrating the growth he would have shown had he had more instruction, you're neglecting to meet his need. So remember, we have to meet the needs of all students. Those are here, those in the middle, those below. So I feel like my kid who is here might still be here, but could have been even further had he had in-person instruction, more virtual support or anything. So not, again, this year's a wash, but nothing in next year plan tells me that he's going to be okay. Saying the third grade team needs to bring it, right? It just doesn't make me feel good.
I get that. One thing to keep in mind that like our second grade reading data looks better this year than it did last year, right? And that means nothing for Leland, right?
Because he was a first grader. So you have to look at first grade data, reading
right.
data this year.
Yeah, but yes. So one of the other things that was on my list to share with everybody was this, and Gertie's been consistently asking about this. Like, is this going to speak to second grade? No, but we did start our MTSS discussion today with our LSAT. Where's the share? So we're beginning to put this plan together for our implementation of a multi-tiered system of supports, right? So at a very high level, this is not a plan, I recognize that, but it's the beginnings. One of the things that I talked about with our team is like, given everything, is this reasonable, right? So I think that the question is unanswered yet. But what we worked on today is like clearly identifying and articulating what our tier 1 supports are, our tier 1 programming is, so that it can be excellent in the beginning of next year. Develop the triangle means it's like the visual of what those tier 1, 2, and 3 things are. And we started piloting the data system. We have our social workers, Ms. Kane, our reading interventionist, and our math coach who are working with groups of kids. There is a really robust tool that we'll be using next year to keep track of our students who are getting these supports, and regular updates on their progress in the supports, not just in their regular instruction, so that there's no question about the progress they're making. We plan on making our master schedule with our intervention time, building out the professional learning. I want to have like a big thing on co-teaching next year, because I think there's a lot of growth in one, organizing, and two, implementing the highly effective and highly yield co-teaching strategies, which I haven't had any opportunity to observe this year because I don't know how they work in virtual, but they're very different in person. We started our conversation with our special education department, understanding the needs and the service hours of the students with IEPs, so that we're building our schedule around them as a form of prioritization. And that'll be the first steps in redoing our master schedule. And then from there, it's a bunch of professional learning. I had a question mark in this piloting our system and implementing because I'm not sure. I don't know yet how much we can take on, and it might make sense to pilot this system at 3rd grade, and of course implement our interventions from the beginning. Some schools in this conversation like to wait and do their data, but we don't have any more time to wait to intervene. But again, it's not just intervention; it's also the strong tier 1, and then loosely going on from there. We'll see how we do, and this data system should provide us with very clear evidence and data on our progress, and that'll give us the capacity to make improvements. So no, that's not like an answer to 2nd grade, but I think that's something that I've certainly been talking about, and we have some progress recently with the ALT. We have to teach our entire team about like what MTSS looks like and the different tools and structures that we'll have, different from RTI or different in addition to RTI for the things that we're working. We want to keep them there, but also getting around the mindset of every student needs something, right? Let's use Leland, right? Leland might not fall into the below grade level for reading, but that doesn't mean this intervention time he gets nothing. The slash on the intervention time ideally is also an enrichment time where kids are being challenged in new and creative ways that supplement the curriculum, right? So the intervention time isn't the tier 2 and 3 kids like disappear to someone that's not their homeroom teacher, but it's more everyone's on deck to support what a student needs, whether that's an intervention or an enrichment.
Well, I'd like to thank you. I know tonight we had lots of pressing questions, and we thank you for your honest response. I think if anyone has any lingering thoughts or questions, it's actually 8:03. So I want to be respectful of time. We kind of rolled into public comment because, of course, Term 4 and summer acceleration plans really were campus updates. But if there's any one who has a pressing question that can't be sent in an email, I'll open up for a hot second, and we'll share that if anyone joined us late and didn't have an opportunity to sign our sign-in sheet, I did repost it again in the chat. And I'd like to capture who was here with us tonight and who your children are as we begin our recruiting process for LSAT team members for next year. So I'll close with that.
Ramona, I did have one other thing to share about some updates that are hopefully some good news.
Okay.
But we had the mayor, we had our representative of Congress in our class last couple of weeks, both experiences. Our representatives and our leaders faced some really tough questions from our kids, which was fantastic. We're still doing our Spirit Week this week. We had our first ever like dual school morning meeting where we heard all about how we are being environmentally responsible from kids at Peabody and kids at Watkins. Girls on the Run is off and running. Kindred is nearing its end with our staff and our parents. I met with the staff. Was that this week or last week? And I think a meeting with our parents on the 22nd, maybe, as they kind of near the end of their first round of engagement with Kindred. And then I went to 3 play dates today, which was great. We had the pre-K 3, 2nd grade, and 4th grade, and all grade levels are going to have a play date in April. And we're working on setting up some step-up play dates so that our rising 3rd graders can meet with our 3rd grade teachers for next year. And that's one way that we're going to support the transition from this wild year and start to build relationships in person with our next year's teachers. So that's something that everybody in the community can look forward to.
Well, thank you. And thank you for giving us some happy news to end on. I did see a comment about the 5th grade play date being so late in May. So we hope that's something you can take a look at the calendar and see if it can be moved up, or maybe even if, I know, as I recall, Principal Fraser sharing the availability of the field, right? So many of us parents across grade levels, we talk offline, we can organize our own play date, just having access, but just, I know how important it is for those who never met their teacher in person. I didn't make it today, but my husband did bring Leland out, and he was excited to actually see in person his teacher who he had only seen through the computer all year. So I think end of the year, based on comment, is a bit late. So if you could just, okay, you'll add it. I just saw that. He's going to add in April. Perfect. See how easy that was? Thank you. Any final comments for the good of the cause? I don't see any hands raised. I see, thank you all for the update. All right, thank you, thank you. And to that, I will bid everyone a good night. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you this time next month.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Thank you.